An ad in the race for a state Supreme Court will come off the air after today, after concerns about its content and the people involved.
You may have had some questions about it, too. Political reporter Jessica Arp tells us which claims are misleading in tonight's reality check.
A Jefferson County case is dramatized in the latest ad from Wisconsin Alliance for Reform, a conservative group that's been running ads attacking Judge Joanne Kloppenburg.
She told police about her father's abuse. When she was 6, he asked her to touch him. At age 10, he asked her to expose her breasts, and he was convicted of showing her video of a sex act when she was 12.
This is misleading. A girl did report to Fort Atkinson police the acts described in the ad, but James Hunt was found not guilty by a jury of sexual assault of a child. He was found guilty of causing a child to view a sex act for showing a video to the young girl on his phone, and that's where Hunt's appeal came in.
But Judge Joanne Kloppenburg voted to reverse his conviction on a technicality.
This needs clarification. Hunt made the case to the appeals court that Jefferson County Judge Randy Koshnick should have allowed testimony from a man saying he never sent the video the young girl said she saw. The judge didn't allow it, saying how Hunt got the video was not relevant.
The appeals court disagreed, said the testimony was relevant and it could have affected the jury's opinion of whether Hunt was credible, and ordered Hunt to have a new trial.
The Supreme Court said Kloppenburg was wrong and upheld his conviction.
This also needs clarification. The Supreme Court, in a 4-3 decision, reversed the unanimous decision of all 3 appeals court judges, not just Kloppenburg. Justices agreed that the testimony was relevant and shouldn't have been left out at trial, but said they felt the jury would have convicted Hunt even absent the error. He spent time in jail, is a registered sex offender, and is now on community monitoring.
The family of James Hunt has been arguing that this ad is slanderous to him. And while you may have seen the ad on the air before and today, Wisconsin Alliance for Reform says out of respect for the victims in the case, they're taking it off the air tomorrow.
Our political reporter Jessica Arp looks at the claims of who's standing up for seniors. It's tonight's reality check.
In competing ads, Russ Feingold and Ron Johnson are focusing on benefits for seniors and who has done more to undermine them.
Keep them working. That's Senator Ron Johnson's plan for seniors. He supports privatizing Social Security and wants to raise the retirement age so seniors have to keep working until they're 70.
This needs clarification. We've looked at this issue before in the 2010 Senate race, where Johnson said this.
I'm going to go there and I'm going to actually address those problems. And I'm willing to take a look at all the options. They all have to be on the table. It's going to require a bipartisan approach.
Johnson told WisPolitics in 2011 that things like means testing and raising the retirement age should be on the table, shielding those age 55 and older from any changes. Then he more recently said this about George W. Bush's efforts to privatize the program.
George Bush tried to do that. And remember, I said he got slaughtered politically. You know, it went nowhere, which I thought was a shame.
And yet, Johnson's campaign won't say today whether he'd support privatization, instead saying he'll, quote, consider any serious proposal on the issue.
He also has a plan for Medicare, turn it into a voucher program, and add means testing, so seniors pay more out of pocket or are left without coverage altogether.
This also needs clarification. This plan isn't Johnson's, it's Paul Ryan's. But Johnson did vote for Ryan's plan that would give seniors a voucher or a premium support to buy private insurance as part of a 2013 budget amendment that did not become law. Johnson is also making claims about Feingold's record on Social Security.
Russ Feingold claims he's for seniors, but he voted to increase taxes on Social Security benefits.
This is true. When Feingold was in the Senate, he voted for this as part of a massive budget plan in 1993. It did increase taxes on Social Security benefits, but only for those with higher incomes. At the time, it affected about 11% of beneficiaries.
But because Congress hasn't changed the level of income for who owes taxes since 1993, now about half of those on Social Security pay this tax on their benefits.
Political reporter Jessica Arp takes a look at 2 ads you've been likely seeing in tonight's reality check.
2 third-party groups say they're using math to tell you who's most likely to win the GOP nomination and the general election. And in both cases, the math doesn't completely add up.
A vote for Ted Cruz is a vote for Hillary Clinton.
Because every poll shows John Kasich's the only one who can beat Hillary Clinton.
This is misleading. Every poll done across the country has not shown this, but most done recently have. Real Clear Politics, which averages polls from across the country, showed Clinton leading Kasich heavily through most of last summer. But this year, he's led her in nearly every poll.
Kasich wins. 10 points more likely than Cruz, 15 points more likely than Trump.
This needs clarification. Let's look at the latest polling on each, according to Real Clear Politics. Kasich beats Clinton by 6.2 points. Cruz loses to Clinton by 2.8 points. And Trump loses to Clinton as well by 10.6 points.
You should know that the group paying for this ad, New Day Independent Media Committee, is a super PAC supporting John Kasich. The second ad is paid for by national political group Club for Growth, who is supporting Ted Cruz.
If you don't want Donald Trump to win, your choice comes down to this: math. Only Ted Cruz can beat Donald Trump. John Kasich can't do it. The math won't work.
This needs clarification. Here are the current delegate totals, according to the Associated Press. Kasich can't win enough delegates to win the nomination outright, and he'd have to win nearly all of the delegates remaining to beat Trump.
But that's not Kasich's plan. He's been saying if he continues to run, it will help prevent Trump from getting to 1,237 delegates, and he believes he can beat Trump at a contested convention.
A vote for Kasich actually helps Trump by dividing the opposition.
This is misleading. First, delegates pledged to Kasich will still vote for Kasich at the convention under convention rules, not go to Cruz as you see in the ad's graphic. Secondly, it's not clear that if Kasich dropped out, all his votes would go to Cruz. Even then, Cruz would have to win nearly 90% of the remaining delegates to get enough to win the nomination.
The bottom line is that Trump has a commanding lead in the delegate count, but it may be difficult for any of these three candidates to get enough delegates to win the nomination outright.
Senator Ron Johnson is attacking the fundraising of Russ Feingold in his latest ad.
Political reporter Jess Garb gives us the background behind the claims in tonight's reality check.
Ron Johnson's latest ad uses sinister music and a local TV interview to attack a former Feingold political PAC.
Obviously, we're going to try to support candidates directly.
This needs clarification. Feingold set up two organizations in 2011, a Political Action Committee, or PAC, and a nonprofit group. When you look at the PAC's spending, you can see in 2012 it only spent 7% on candidate contributions. In 2014, only 2% went to that. About half of the money in both years went to fundraising. But Feingold told Rachel Maddow in an interview his goals were bigger than just donations.
Obviously, we're going to try to support candidates directly that are committed to these progressive principles. We're going to try to urge people that are in office right now to do things like support the Disclose Act to try to make sure that this information about these contributions come out. But we're going to do far more than that. We're going to make sure we use the internet and all the mechanisms that are available now that didn't used to be available to make sure that people organize, sign petitions.
This needs clarification. The charts show that the money was spent largely on fundraising and about 20% on salaries, including $77,000 for Feingold. But the campaign says those fundraising numbers are misleading, as one of the aims of Progressive United was to get their mailing list to give to candidates directly.
You can see here Progressives United helped raise more than $25,000 each for state senators Jennifer Schilling and Bob Wirtz through online portals. If you consider the totals, in 2014, the Feingold campaign says Progressives United raised $1.6 million for candidates. They spent about $1.2 million that cycle on fundraising costs.
Only 5% of the money from that group went to federal candidates. A lot of it went to pay salaries. How do you explain that?
Since the ad doesn't let Feingold explain, we reached out to WKOW, where this interview originally aired, to ask what he said. Feingold reiterated that the purpose of Progressive United was not just to give money directly, but rather, quote, take on the big issues and get hundreds of thousands of emails to people to advocate or raise money.
Who's to blame over a painkiller scandal at the Toma VA hospital?
News 3 viewers have been asking for a reality check on the campaign TV ad that you've probably seen in the last week.
Who knew what when about a prescription opiate problem at the Toma VA? a doctor accused of overprescribing drugs, and 3 patients who died. That's what's at issue in the race for U.S. Senate.
I served with the 82nd Airborne in Iraq, and ultimately I was medically discharged from the Army.
Former Toma VA worker and whistleblower Ryan Honnell is featured in an ad by Freedom Partners Action Fund, a super PAC funded by the Koch brothers.
I found out that Russ Feingold got a memo in 2009 that outlined veteran harm, and nothing was done.
This needs clarification. The memo in question was sent by a union official that represents Toma workers, Lynn Ellinghusen. We couldn't reach her for this story, but she's made multiple statements about this memo.
A news story last October highlights 2 memos in 2008 and 2009 detailing issues with the doctor and narcotics. Both were marked by Ellinghusen as hand-delivered to the offices of Feingold and other Democrats. But in October, she said she told someone to deliver the memos for her and had no proof they were ever delivered. Then in January, she said she made the delivery note in error and that she had a foggy memory about any meetings with Feingold about issues at Toma. As for Feingold and the other Democrats listed in the report, all of them say they have no record of actually getting the memo.
Russ Feingold ignored veterans' concerns while veterans were dying at the facility.
This also needs clarification. While the memo detailed unexpected deaths, including suicides, the only death directly linked to this issue happened in 2014, 5 years later and 4 years after Feingold was voted out of office. Feingold is instead arguing Johnson is to blame.
When Johnson's office learned of the failures at Toma, he did nothing. The complaints changed hands from one aide to another in a congressional black hole.
This needs clarification. Johnson's office says Honnell's complaints were sent to a Senate subcommittee. It turns out the paperwork was only sent to another subcommittee aide who never told Chairwoman Senator Claire McCaskill or Senator Johnson. Johnson's aide said he was not personally aware of any issues at the VA until January of 2015.
Johnson even admitted they were distracted.
Had this not occurred during the election cycle when there's an awful lot of turnover and when people are looking at doing job interviews and stuff?
Johnson says 2 staffers who should have passed along information left for other offices and didn't relay messages properly. Does that mean they were distracted? That's for you to decide.
Last night's presidential debate once again left fact checkers with a lot to sift through, and that includes our own political reporter, Jessica Arp.
The final debate covered a lot of in-depth issues. Let's look at a couple of statements these candidates made about guns.
Because I support the Second Amendment doesn't mean that I want people who shouldn't have guns to be able to threaten you, kill you or members of your family. And so when I think about what we need to do, we have 33,000 people a year who die from guns.
This is true. According to the Centers for Disease Control, 33,599 people died from firearms in 2014. But there's one clarification here. When you look at the causes of death, 33% of those were homicides. 64% were suicides.
In Chicago, which has the toughest gun laws in the United States, probably you could say by far, they have more gun violence than any other city.
This needs clarification. First, Chicago does have some restrictive gun laws, but recent reports have shown many of the guns involved in violent crimes are coming into Illinois from other states, including Indiana. Finally, Chicago does not have the highest number of violent crimes. It's second to New York.
If you go with what Hillary is saying, in the 9th month, you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb of the mother just prior to the birth of the baby. Now, you can say that that's okay, and Hillary can say that that's okay, but it's not okay with me.
This is false. First, Clinton has said she supports a late-term abortion ban with exceptions for the life and health of the mother. Trump actually said that himself in 1999, but has since changed his position. Secondly, this is an extremely rare, if ever performed, type of abortion. Around 1% happen after 20 weeks, according to one abortion rights group, and the American Medical Association recommends this never happen unless the baby has a, quote, serious fetal anomaly incompatible with life.
Donald has said he's in favor of defunding Planned Parenthood. He even supported shutting the government down to defund Planned Parenthood.
This needs clarification. Trump did say last year that he would support a government shutdown in order to defund Planned Parenthood. Then days later, he softened on that position, saying he'd be willing to entertain supporting, quote, the good aspects of Planned Parenthood instead.